Welcome back, everyone. Today, we aren't just talking about a politician, we are talking about an architect. Not of buildings, but of the very socio-economic foundation of modern India. We are diving into the life and legal genius of Chaudhry Charan Singh. He was a man who believed that India's heart beat in its villages, and he spent his entire life ensuring that heart didn't stop. This is the agrarian blueprint. To understand the policy, you must understand the man. Singh wasn't born into elite privilege. Born in 1902 in Nurpur, Meerut, he lived the village realities. He felt the crushing weight of rural poverty firsthand. But his mind was sharpened by two massive forces. First, the Arya Samaj, which instilled in him a fierce belief in a casteless, egalitarian society. Second, Mahatma Gandhi, who gave him the framework for nonviolent resistance and the dream of a self-sufficient rural economy. These three circles, peasant life, social reform, and Gandhian economics, overlap to create the leader we know today. Look at this timeline. Singh's political authority wasn't handed to him, it was forged in the crucible of struggle. He joined the Congress in 1929 and went to jail multiple times, in 1930 for the Salt Laws, 1940 for Satyagraha, and 1942 for Quit India. But here is the legal shift. In 1937, he was elected to the UP Legislative Assembly with a staggering 78% of the vote. He wasn't just a protester anymore, he was a lawmaker. By 1946, as parliamentary secretary, he began drafting the very laws that would dismantle centuries of oppression. Now, let's look at the enemy. Before Singh's reforms, the Indian farmer was caught in a Zamindari extraction trap. At the top, the British Crown taking revenue. Below them, the wealthy Zamindar, who took rent and begar, forced labor, while investing nothing in the land. Beneath them, the usurious moneylender. And at the bottom, the tenant farmer, giving up 85% of his crop. Singh famously described the tenant as a hapless missing link between a beast of burden and a man. This wasn't just unfair, it was an economic dead end. This is Singh's magnum opus as a legal mind, the UP's Zamindari Abolition and Land Reforms Act of 1950. The scale was massive, empowering tens of millions across 67 million acres. But notice the method. It wasn't a violent Marxist revolution. It was a peaceful liquidation. The math was brilliant, landlords were compensated with government bonds. By turning tenants into independent peasant proprietors, he broke the old pyramid. He considered this meticulous, lawsuit-proof legislation the defining achievement of his life. Post-1947, India faced an ideological crossroads. Soviet Marxism wanted nationalized land and heavy machinery. Nehruvian socialism wanted a mix but focused heavily on urban industry. Singh proposed a middle path. He didn't want the state to own the land, nor did he want giant corporations to. He wanted decentralized peasant proprietorship. He saw the peasant not as an archaic relic, but as the democratic bulwark of India. His goal? An egalitarian rural democracy. Why did he reject the Soviet model? Because of the illusion of size. Singh argued that in a labor surplus country like India, giant mechanized farms, the Soviet kolkhoz, were a disaster. They required high capital and absorbed very little labor. Instead, he proved that small-scale peasant proprietorship maximizes yield per acre. It satisfies the psychological need for ownership and, most importantly, it absorbs India's massive unemployed workforce. Organic agriculture, he argued, doesn't need economies of scale, it needs the eye of the owner. This led to the great debate at the 1959 Nagpur Resolution. Nehru pushed for Soviet-style collective farming to extract cheap food for urban cities. Singh stood his ground at the All India Congress Committee. He used data to argue that collective farming would turn peasants into state serfs. He won the debate and defeated the proposal, saving the Indian farmer. But it cost him dearly. He lost favor with the urban elite Congress leadership. He chose the peasant over his own political career. Singh warned of an economic nightmare. He argued that if you starve the roots, the village, to feed the branches, the urban industry, the whole tree will fall. By 1981, his warnings came true. Despite massive state investment in heavy industry, the agricultural workforce remained stagnant at 72%. The trickle-down promise failed. Unemployment skyrocketed because capital was prioritized over labor in a country where labor is our greatest strength. Singh's blueprint for decentralization was simple: 1. Substitute capital with labor. 2. Protect cottage industries. 3. Redirect state capital to rural works like irrigation. He diagnosed that policies failed because they were designed by urban state bureaucrats. Look at these stats: 80% of the civil services and 50% of the cabinet came from the 20% urban population. Singh was the rare, organic intellectual who brought the lived experience of the village into the highest echelons of power. His journey took him to the very top. From the first non-Congress CM of UP to becoming the 5th Prime Minister of India in 1979. In the end, his legacy is a synthesis. He recognized that true democracy in India was impossible without economic independence for its largest demographic. He empowered them in 1950, protected them in 1959, and tried to sustain them in 1978. In 2024, the nation finally provided posthumous validation by awarding him the Bharat Ratna. Every year on 23rd December, we celebrate Kisan Divas, Farmers' Day, on his birthday. As modern India faces new agrarian crises, Singh's Village First ideology isn't just history, it is the essential, unignorable blueprint for our future. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep questioning the status quo.